Here is the Streetmaster intake I'm doing a little bit of port work on. Now, I'm doing very little actually here. There is an Edelbrock manual out there that shows how to do a lot to make this a competition ready intake, but that's not what I'm doing. What I did was I used this tool, which is spring loaded, pops open, and a caliper to measure the inside of the port. You can see here. This is smaller, but it fits here. The inside of the port, the whole way through, is about 2 inches by 1 inch. At least when you get in about an inch into the port, it's 2 inches by 1 inch. And then right here at the neck, you can see it necks down a lot. It's about 1.75 by 1 inch. So it's a little smaller than 1 inch. It comes in just a tiny bit on the sides, but quite a bit top and bottom. So what I've done here is there was previously an intake. I've traced out the gasket line for the top to gasket match the top, and I'm just coming down enough on the bottom to make it 2 inches here. I'm not going to do more than that, because if you bell this out where it opens up right before the head, you aren't gaining anything. This is actually going to work better unported or ported just to the size of the runner. So that's what I'm doing there. Here's one that's been rough ported. I'm going to get in there with a cylinder sander and get the rest. So in compared to the ports on the heads, these are 2.34 by 1.34, so still significantly larger than the intake. But I don't want to port match the intake because, like I said, the runners are much smaller than that. So it's not going to do any good to bring them out to that width and height unless I'm doing everything, which means porting all the way back in the runner, which I'm not doing. Now, something else I'm doing, because I'm using the FiTech and I don't need to heat up the carburetor, I have trimmed out some steel pieces, used some high temp RTV, and put them over the exhaust crossover, because I don't want to heat up the FI unit. That's going to do me no good, and just heat up the fuel and everything. You can see here on the gasket that it sits below that. So you can see it's completely within the gasket surface, and I can use more high temp RTV on the outside of the metal piece against the intake, and that'll form a nice seal, keeping it from, say, popping off there and flopping around. So that's my exhaust crossover pipe. And when I mentioned that I gasket matched the top of the intake, this is why. This is the only reason, is because the gasket on the port goes all the way to the top of the port, so it's a good way just to match up the tops of the two ports. I'm not porting to a gasket, I'm porting to the port. On top anyway. The sides and bottom are going to be much smaller, but that won't cause a big intake upset in this case. So that's my take on how to prepare a 390 Streetmaster intake for installation. Do it however you'd like, but I think these are pretty decent suggestions. And another reason I went with the Edelbrock Streetmaster is it's an open plenum design, which what I've heard is these EFI kits prefer the open plenum. It also, the dual plane helps with the signal to a carburetor to help pull that fuel out with vacuum pressure, which this EFI unit's not going to need. So this is going to be a real nice pairing between the two. We're going from, I think, 340 CFM or something like that with the 2-barrel up to a 900 CFM throttle body that, due to the high pressure injection, will still respond even better than that 2-barrel does. It's a win-win combination. Right here, big changes to the top end of the Mercury.